Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we shall begin this afternoon sitting with a communication from the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Mrs. Marija PEJČINOvić BURIĆ. Madam Secretary General, dear Maria, it is a great pleasure to welcome you in our brand new hemicycle for what will be your last official address to the Assembly. Please allow me to thank you wholeheartedly for all the work achieved during your 5 years mandate, which are not technically over, of course. There were many crises and challenges, as we discussed this morning in the Bureau, during your mandate, to which you swiftly adapted, leading the Council of Europe and its staff in uncharted waters. Let me mention but a few. The sanitary crisis of the COVID-19, which prompted the organization to adapt to new ways of working, the Russian war of aggression against our member state, Ukraine, and the following exclusion of Russia of this organization, but also a historic fourth summit of the Council of Europe, the first of its kind since Warsaw in 2005, which saw a recommitment of our political leaders to the fundamental values of the Council of Europe. The establishment of the Register of Damage is one of its core achievements, and you have never failed to take the opportunity to highlight this during your numerous meetings with actors outside of this organization. These were definitely not easy years for you to deal, dear Maria. Yet you managed in all circumstances to push the Council of Europe and the values it defends forward, protecting the fundamental rights of all our European citizens, pushing high the promotion of women's rights and defending the rule of law. Another subject close to my heart, I'm happy we achieved results on during your mandate in the framework of artificial intelligence. In this regard, I would like to also thank you for spreading the word on this important and first of its kind international legally binding treaty and for encouraging more states to adhere to it. We were happy that we had you as a Secretary General, that you were there to act, to benefit our Assembly and the Committee of Ministers, but also the staff of the Council of Europe. We are looking forward to hearing your address and the lessons you draw from your professional experience in Strasbourg. So, Madam Secretary General, dear Maria, I'm honored to give you the floor.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée parlementaire.
Thank you very much, President of the Parliamentary Assembly, the Council of Europe, dear Theodoros. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Parliamentary Assembly, dear friends. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to make this last address to you in my capacity as Secretary General. As a former member of this Assembly, I've known for a very long time the skills, the commitment, and the devotion that members here devote to their work. And in my current role, I've had the real privilege of gaining a new insight into the depth of your determination to protect and to promote human rights, democracy, and the rule of law throughout our continent. I share this determination, and I'm proud of what we have achieved together during my term as Secretary General. Yes, of course, we've had to overcome a number of challenges. A pandemic that cost the lives and livelihoods of so many people, both on our continent as well as throughout the world, the rise in populism and extreme nationalism, which has sparked anti-rights movements as well as democratic backsliding. And of course, in 2022, the decision made by the Russian Federation to trigger a full-scale war against our member state, Ukraine. A brutal, illegal, and continuing war which has caused death and destruction, which has caused rapes and acts of torture, the scale and size of which Europe has not experienced since the end of the Second World War. As a consequence, the Council of Europe displayed a united front and, first of all, suspended and then expelled the Russian Federation from our organization. We were right to do so. Following this, I think that it was right to call a fourth summit of our heads of state and government to show unity, to give direction and also an impetus to help us to have the largest impact possible in the new geopolitical environment in which we have been and are still working. This summit, which was held last year in Reykjavik, was the largest gathering ever organized for the leaders of our 46 member states. It was also a resounding success. Not only did our leaders commit once again to respect the values and the standards that define our organization, and especially the implementation of the European Convention of Human Rights and the enforcement of final judgments handed down by the European Court of Human Rights, but they also approved a series of specific commitments in parallel to other initiatives that are already underway and others which have been implemented since last year. The importance, therefore, of the Council of Europe is not only obvious, but we also have the largest and most ambitious program of work in decades. We now have a new set of principles for democracy, which enable us to measure and analyze the health of European democracies, with a new committee to help us do this. Last month, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs met at our ministerial session and adopted our new Framework Convention on Artificial Intelligence. This is an international treaty, the first of its kind, and it will be opened up for signature in September of this year. And this will play its part in ensuring that artificial intelligence respects our rights and does not undermine them. We're also working on new tools on the environment, acknowledging the threat to rights posed by the triple planetary crisis, that is pollution, climate change, and the loss in biodiversity, and also on migrant trafficking. This is a scourge which is causing untold suffering to so many people, and also which is enriching criminal gangs. We also enlarged the membership of the Istanbul Convention, which is a benchmark for when it comes to preventing and combating violence against women and domestic violence, and which has also resulted in genuine and positive changes in all countries which have ratified it. And we've also adopted a new strategy for gender equality and taken various initiatives to support LGBTI persons, Roma and travellers, as well as migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, despite and sometimes in response to the rise of fearsome anti-rights groups.
We have also opened for signature a second additional protocol to the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. which last week attracted its 46th signature, and will go on to extend the reach of justice further into cyberspace. The Committee of Ministers has adopted my roadmap complementing other recent reforms to bring civil society closer to the work of the Council of Europe, and in turn, better ensure civic participation throughout our member states. And we have taken significant steps to build closer relations with other international organizations, both to ensure that our work is complementary and to avoid duplication. This has been a priority of mine from the beginning of my mandate, and I'm pleased by the level of cooperation with the UN, the OSCE, and the European Union, which has taken further significant steps towards ratifying the European Convention on Human Rights, and which has also provided several of our member states with a membership perspectives. We will now assist those countries in meeting key aspects of the criteria required to become full EU members, as we have with so many other European countries in the past. One of those countries is Ukraine. And to Ukraine's future, its free, democratic, and European future, we remain absolutely committed. Our unique register of damage became fully operational in April. With offices in The Hague and Kyiv, it has already received thousands of submissions, and it will process many, many more, as the first step towards an international compensation mechanism in which the Council of Europe is engaged and ready to play its part. Just as we are working closely with the core group and are ready to play whatever role required in setting up a tribunal to try the crime of aggression. All of this recognizes the need for Russia to be held to account for its crimes. And so too does our consultation group on the children of Ukraine, which aims to provide help to Ukrainian children wherever they may be, and complements the work that we have done with member states to help them meet the physical and psychological needs of the Ukrainian refugees who have come in search of safety. We also remain committed to our action plan on resilience, recovery, and reconstruction, which is reinforcing Ukraine's democratic institutions, structures, and practice now, and moving forward. I know that in the months and years ahead, the Council of Europe will continue to do whatever it takes to support Ukraine. This remains our number one priority. But I also know that work on all of the issues that I have mentioned today will also continue, as it will on many others, not least our contact group on Belarus, set up almost 2 years ago as a truly unique concept that provides support and training to democratic forces and civil society actors from that country. New challenges will also emerge and require attention, as they always do. In this way, the Council of Europe can play a pivotal role in reversing the democratic backsliding that weighs on our continent today, and help forge a future in which our common standards in human rights, democracy, and the rule of law stand firm and strong. Last autumn, our member states agreed on my proposal to increase this organization budget in real terms for the first time in 17 years. So as we continue to celebrate the Council of Europe's 75th anniversary, I believe that the importance of its future success is understood by our member states, and that despite all the complications, there is an opportunity to build on this organization's extraordinary legacy with a new layer of success. I hope that each of you will play your part in making that happen. And from not so far away, I will be looking on and wishing you well. Thank you very much once again for all the support during these, as the President of the Assembly said, very difficult years, very challenging years, but I think we can all be proud of what we have achieved, and I really wish that you continue this important work, as Parliamentary Assembly is a political and very important statutory body of the Council of Europe, and you can take the things further in moving on the path of the three pillars of this organization: human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. And I wish you all well in doing that. Thank you very much.
Dear Maria, this is a moment to be remembered, so I would like to ask you to wait just for a few minutes. I want to thank you so much on behalf of this Assembly for these very inspiring thoughts. I should like to add, dear colleagues, that we at the Parliamentary Assembly always appreciated your readiness to engage in dialogue and take into consideration the views of our parliamentarians. This morning, you were present in the Bureau meeting. The leaders of our political groups paid tribute to you, eventful, but also very successful and productive term of office. They had proposed you to write a book. You remember that I told you, don't write it yet because you are too young to resign, and books, autobiographies, are for retirees. So, I want to add just finally, a few words. I wish to reiterate the message conveyed this morning on behalf of all our colleagues. Thank you for your excellent work. Thank you so much for your fruitful cooperation and dialogue with the Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to the values, principles, and objectives of this organization. We wish you the best of success in your future endeavors, and you will allow me to present you a small gift that I brought from Athens. I'm coming right now near you.
Well, it's not by chance. It's Athens, the cradle of democracy. So it will remind me that I worked here on one of the three pillars that are important. Thank you very much once again.
Before we go on, dear colleagues, allow me to remind you that you should insert your badges before taking the floor. And as you begin your speech, please press the microphone button once only and wait for 2 seconds, and it will work. So now, the next item on the agenda is the continuation of the debate on the progress report of the Bureau and the Standing Committee, and the report of the ad hoc committee of the Bureau on the observation of the presidential and parliamentary elections in North Macedonia. I remind members that speaking time in this debate will be limited to 3 minutes. The debate must conclude at 5 minutes to 5, so I propose to interrupt the list of speakers at about 10 minutes to 5. In the debate, I will call first, on behalf of the Socialist Group, Mr. Stefan Senach. Dear Stefan, you have the floor.
Dankeschön, Herr Präsident.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my congratulations to both rapporteurs and regarding both reports. And in addition, the elections in Moldova as well have to be mentioned, and the political transition that is taking place there. The progress report mentions what has taken place between April and June, and in other countries as well have designated their judges, and 3 out of 4 of them will be up for election right here as well. So when we look at the entire period, however, we see that there are 2 or 3 points of importance. First of all, we've had a number of different discussions with the candidates for the new Secretary General, and let me take this particular opportunity to say to Marija, on behalf of my group, we indeed want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the work that you've done. I remember those times back then when we were together here in this Parliamentary Assembly, and there was always wonderful cooperation at the political level between our political groups as well, with your contribution always. We achieved a lot then, and that remains unforgettable for me. In this period, we have a new commissioner as well, Human Rights Commissioner, and there were very, very disturbing issues as well that were brought up for discussion. First of all, this NGO law in Georgia, that's of great concern to us as well. When we talk about the protection of democracy, very important, but also very disturbing, is the populist government in Slovakia, which has completely destroyed the media landscape in Slovakia. The Council of Europe has always emphasized the importance of free media, and the European Public Broadcaster as an institution is something that we have always very, very staunchly supported. So I do feel our solidarity is necessary to all those journalists that have done excellent work and have provided for independent journalism. The fact that a number of different channels and media outlets have been dissolved in Slovakia of great concern. Also, 7 years I was rapporteur for Azerbaijan, and let's not forget Ana Mammadeh, who was awarded here as well. I simply wanted to mention that this individual has now been put in prison, and all opportunities have to be taken in order to call for the release of Ana Mammadeh. And in the meantime, there have been very, very important conferences that have taken place concerning Ukraine and in Switzerland as well. Now, our group takes this progress report, embraces it, and indeed The rapporteur has done excellent work on this report, and the issue of Moldova, what was mentioned there, was very interesting, and we do very much hope that the Gagauz people will once again be able to play some sort of significant role in that country. Thank you.
PP, Christian Buchmann.
Esteemed colleagues, first of all, on behalf of the EPP Group, let me express many thanks to Madam Secretary General for her commitment for the Parliamentary Assembly and for the Council of Europe, for her work and for her cooperation, her willingness to cooperate also with the members of the Parliamentary Assembly. I would also express many thanks. I would like to express many thanks to the rapporteurs of both of the reports. We, as the EPP Group, will be with these reports. I was part of the PACE electoral observation mission to North Macedonia for the second round of the presidential elections and also for the parliamentary elections. And it was quite interesting to see about and to learn about the developments in the country. These elections were competitive and well run, particularly given the challenge of organizing two elections at a time. Despite the strong political polarization and fragmentation in the country due to inefficiencies within the public administration, as some of the people see it, corruption issues, lack of reforms, the election day was generally calm and peaceful. On behalf of the EPP Group, and in addition to the report presented by Alfred here, I'd like to mention just a few points. The voting procedures were largely respected, but in a number of cases, election boards did not fully keep to the procedures during the voting count. The access to polling stations for the elderly and the handicapped people was often not easy, therefore hindrances should be suppressed, and measures to improve the organization of the out-of-country voting should be taken, in our opinion. Finally, I would like to mention the men and women of the electoral boards. They did, in my opinion, an excellent job. They demonstrated how well-trained they were for their jobs, and this is also an important point for the assessment of Northern Macedonia and their willingness to assess the European Union. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Christian. On behalf of the European Conservatives, Zsolt Nemet. Zsolt.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, I would like to congratulate to Mrs. Gardini and Mr. Hare for their reports. As I have mentioned not long ago, this is really great to be in this, back in this chamber again, which still smells good and new. And I would like to congratulate to our Secretary General and our President that you have been able to manage this hard period, moving between the old and new location of us in the European Parliament. And I think it was also important that we have been able to save the party line sitting order structure we have embraced in the European Parliament. So congratulations to everybody who have played their role in this period. Yes, we are going to elect our Secretary General, and I would like to congratulate to Mrs. BURIČ for her work. And I would like to also mention that I think it is important that our candidates satisfy the Juncker criteria, and I was glad to experience that they have visited mainly probably all of the capitals in the Council of Europe, over 30. I personally was glad to receive all 3 of them, for example, in Budapest. So I believe that this process is unique. Until now, we have not had this experience with the Secretary Generals, and I would like to welcome it is exemplars. I would like to draw your attention to a scandal. Our member, Mr. Goncharenko, member of our European Conservative Group, just sitting in front of me, an MP, was convicted in absentia for 10 years by a Russian military district court for justifying terrorism. I believe that this has no legal basis. It is really scandalous, and I think it's happening first time to a member of PEJČ, and we should find our way and means to step up for our colleague. Finally, I would like to congratulate to everybody who has been elected at the European elections. National elections also happened. The key message of this election was that the European Union works. And as John Paul II said in the 80s, Europe breathes with 2 lungs. I think we can use this paraphrase for today. Europe breathes with 2 lungs. One lung is the European Union, the other lung is the Council of Europe, and we need to have cooperation. Dear colleagues, finally, the North Macedonian elections, I think it proves that North Macedonia is a working democracy, and it is high time for the European Union to start negotiations and to prove that enlargement is not an illusion, but a reality. Thank you very much.
Dear Sol, thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for reminding to the Assembly what happened to Oleksiy Goncharenko. I stood by him from the first moment by reproducing a statement that it is an unacceptable action from the Russian regime. Unexpected, but on the other hand, unfortunately, the way that they are behaving. First of all, we have this war of aggression in Ukraine. They violated any kind of international law, ethics, democracy, rule of law, human rights. Even though it was unexpected, we stand by you, Oleksiy, on this unacceptable action of this Putin's regime. We're going on now. I will give the floor to the leader of the ALDE group, Mr. Julian Gulay.
Thank you, President.
Can you please wait for a minute? We just have to press once and then wait for a couple of seconds.
Your vote card.
My voting card. Thank you, Are we good? Thank you, President. Dear all, on behalf of the Liberals, I want to reiterate the thankfulness that I've shared on our behalf to the Secretary General for your work, your dedication, your commitment, your courageous decision when that was needed. And I don't know if I'm really agreeing with the statement of the President on not encouraging on writing books. The Deputy Secretary General is an excellent author and still a person in office, so I'm looking forward to both follow you in future career, but also looking forward to reading your books. That being said, devo anche ringraziare la rapportrice per questo.
I would also like to thank the rapporteur for the wonderful work done. And I'd like to thank Moldova and Ukraine for beginning a dialogue concerning negotiations for entry into the European Union. Thank you.
Alfred here for the report on North Macedonia. Well written. Thank you for your job, Alfred. I, on behalf of the Liberals, welcome the decision of the European Council to use the windfall profits from Russian central bank frozen assets to support Ukraine's recovery and military defense. Far from the very start of Russia's full-scale war of aggression, our Assembly has been demanding a comprehensive system of responsibility for the crimes committed by Russia. And this week we will examine important reports on this matter, and they offer an excellent analysis, including on the use of frozen assets. And we hope that the democratic world will deliver on this engagement. I would like to draw your attention on two important events taking place this week. Both raise the issue of Ukrainian civilian hostages held by Russia, one on Wednesday, where we are the host. The ALDE group is a side event co-organized by us in collaboration with different important actors, and we'll be discussing the situation of Ukrainian journalists detained in Russia. And on Thursday, we will launch the parliamentary network on the situation of the children of Ukraine. This is a historical moment, and I call upon as many as possible to subscribe to this network. At the same time, we should not forget the fight and the efforts of those who fight for a free and democratic Russia. Some of them outside Russia, some of them still in prison. And I'm thinking of our liberal friend, Vladimir Kara-Murza, who is still in the prison, and he's incarcerated, and along with the other tortured political prisoners, he's fighting his silent war against the dictator from the very little cell where he is now. His life is in danger. We think highly of him. I want to wish lots of wisdom to the Secretary General that is to be elected. There are great decisions to be taken in the future, and I really hope for a solid, transparent, correct, and good partnership between the Secretary General, the Committee of Ministers, and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And I will not end before asking the Committee of Ministers to come with a response to the report they have asked us to write on the accession of Kosovo to the Council of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. On behalf of the United European Left, Andrei Hunko.
President, well, thank you very much, first of all. I'd also like to thank the rapporteur. I'd like to thank Alfred Herd on the North Macedonia report. We're speaking about a progress report. Now, from the beginning, it wasn't always such that we would speak about progress, unfortunately. We have a situation in Azerbaijan where we have backsliding, and the Azerbaijani delegation is unable to accept this. That's not a very positive signal from Azerbaijan, I would say. We have, furthermore, the situation in Kosovo, where this assembly in April proposed that that we initiate this particular process. That was a recommendation that was made by the Committee of Ministers. That's been put aside for the moment. But I think it's important when open issues that are festering, for example, the resolution of the problems that exist with the Serbian community, it's important for these particular issues to be resolved. And we have a major report on that. And in the next weeks and months, and during this week as well, we will be speaking about the situation in Georgia as concerns the so-called foreign agents law. And indeed, I hope that we have a fructiferous debate and that we come up with a good resolution on this matter. Something that's balanced and will result anyway in a balanced resolution. Now, over the weeks, we've been discussing the peace conference in Switzerland and the closing declaration that was signed by the Council of Europe as well. Secretary General ratified that particular declaration. And I think very important when we speak about a peace conference, it's something extremely important, and in this particular resolution as well, the necessity to protect, for necessary protection as concerns nuclear energy, power plants, and also the issues of cereals, and the need for political exchange, the exchange of prisoners as well. But for a proper peace conference, a successful one, I think more countries have to be invited, including the parties involved in the conflict. There are other issues as well, but I just wanted to focus on the key matters. Thank you.
Now with the speakers list, and I will give first the floor to Sibel Arslan. Dear colleagues, I just want to remind you that we first put our buds, and then we just press once, only once, wait for 2 seconds, and the mic is going to work.
Yes, you can. Now it's perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I'm one of the co-rapporteur of the post-monitoring dialogue with North Macedonia with Mr. O'Reilly. And according to our joint observation mission, presidential and parliamentary election in North Macedonia were competitive and well-run. An intensive and pluralistic campaign helped voters to make an informed choice. The elections were marred by negative rhetoric, personal attacks, and occasional threats increased before election day. There were also allegations of vote buying involving all major political parties, which highlights the need for greater efforts to address these concerns. While the legal framework creates the basis for democratic elections, many gaps and inconsistencies remain, making further from essentials. A number of key recommendations made by Venice Commission and ODIHR remain unimplemented. Election days were calm and peaceful. Proceeding is in a constructive atmosphere, despite the strong political polarization and fragmentation. Voting process produced were largely respected, and public confidence in the election administration was generally high. Regarding the representation of women, it must be noted that the quotas were met, but the efforts to at once women were very small. As part of the election observation, a small peace team had the possibility to visit the Idrizovo prison. We noted that the elections were efficiently organized in Idrizovo. The delegation thanks to the authorities for having us there. We were ready to conduct the post-monitoring dialogue with the authorities, and we are looking forward to visiting North Macedonia after the summer break. And I want to thank to Mr. Hare and to the Secretary for this great job.
Merci. Je donne la parole.
Thank you. Let me now give the floor to Mrs. Julakian from Armenia. You have the floor.
Vous devez insérer votre carte.
Please don't forget to put your badge in the reader and then press on the button once and wait 2 seconds, please. And then you should have the floor.
No? Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, while discussing the progress report of the Assembly, let me take the opportunity to tell you about the recent developments in the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. On April 19 this year, the Commissions of Armenia and Azerbaijan, working on the delimitation of the state border between two countries, reached an important agreement. The parties agreed that the border delimitation process will be based on the Alma-Ata Declaration of 1991. Based on this agreement, the parties agreed on the separate sections of the borderline in the northern part of the Armenian-Azerbaijani border in order to bring them into compliance with the legally justified inter-republican border that existed within the Soviet Union at the moment of its dissolution. Since then, more than 12 kilometers of the borderline have been delimited, and the border services of both the countries were deployed along the agreed sections of the borderline. This was indeed a positive and stabilizing step towards the normalization process. However, 10 days later, the foreign affairs ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan met in the symbolic city of Alma-Ata for peace agreement negotiations. But no substantial progress was achieved there, as Azerbaijan is reluctant to reflect the already achieved agreements in the treaty. Furthermore, Azerbaijan came up with the new preconditions declaring that they will be ready to sign the peace treaty only after Armenia amends its constitution, as they argue that there are territorial claims in its provisions, which is not true. Armenia recognizes the territorial integrity and inviolability of the borders of all its neighbors. Armenia is loyal to this principle and does not have any ambitions beyond its internationally recognized 29,743 square kilometers. The Constitution of Armenia and the amendments to it are internal affairs of Armenia, and we consider the attempts by official Baku to intervene in the internal discussions in Armenia as a gross intervention into the internal affairs of the country. Such rhetoric torpedoes the peace process and casts doubts on the sincerity of the leadership of Azerbaijan to achieve peace. In addition to the above-mentioned, recently Azerbaijan started to periodically disseminate information that Armenia is violating the ceasefire regime. Azerbaijan does so every time it is going to initiate another escalation. On June 15, the Prime Minister of Armenia declared that it is the will of the government of the Republic of Armenia not to allow tension, and proposed to Azerbaijan to create a bilateral mechanism for investigation of cases of violations of the ceasefire regime. No answer has been received from Azerbaijan yet. Dear colleagues, Azerbaijan's practice of predicting regional escalations at every opportunity is alarming and comes to prove the analysis made by a number of think tanks that Azerbaijan will do everything to disrupt the process of concluding a peace agreement with Armenia in order to launch a new aggression against Armenia after the COP29 to be held in Baku in November this year. I draw your attention and the one of the international community to this, as well as to the fact that official Yerevan's proposal to conclude the peace agreement within 1 month remained without response by official Baku. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me now give the floor to Mr. Goncharenko. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Vous avez inséré la...
Have you put your badge inside the reader? If you do that, press a button and wait 2 seconds and your microphone should be on.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. And yeah, as you already heard from our president, thanks to President Rousopoulos and thanks to Zsolt Nemet, you already know that if before you didn't have, besides your friends and colleagues, convicted and sentenced criminal, now you have. That's me. 10 years of prison from Russian military court. Last week, this is their decision, and this is their message to all of us. Yes, definitely it's a badge of honor, not just for me in person, but for all our assembly, because we are the only international body which managed to kick out Russia. That's from its membership, and that's great. But it's also a very pragmatic thing from their side. Yes, it's the way to threaten me and also to limit my diplomatic activity in defending our values, because many countries in the world have extradition agreement with Russia, so I already can't go to these countries. And please be aware of this. Yes, I am the first Ukrainian MP and the first member of PEJČ to be sentenced, but believe me, I am not the last. They will continue to do this. So our dilemma is very easy. Either we will take Putin to Hague court, or he will sentence and kill all of us. As easy as this. So Putin delenda est. Putin's regime should be destroyed. This is the only way for us. We don't have any other way. And don't think that it is too hard to do, that it is impossible to do. Just remind, exactly 1 year ago, Prigozhin's mutiny. Just a small group of mercenaries almost took Moscow. They stopped 2 hours before Moscow just because of their indecisiveness. And you know what had happened after? Putin killed Prigozhin. So the only strength that Putin has is your indecisiveness, is our indecisiveness. The only strength he has. So if we are decisive, we can finish this awful regime, and we should do this. And don't think that if Putin would succeed in Ukraine, he would forgive all of you the sanctions, the humiliation, the missiles and tanks to Ukraine. He would never do this. So we don't have choice. We need to finish this awful regime. And we can do this. Believe me. I want to tell you that in the beginning of our meeting, there was a wonderful music and an anthem of Europe, Ode to Joy. I want to remind you another anthem, which is probably even more relevant now. Aux armes, citoyens, formons vos bataillons. This is to arms, my friends, to arms, citizens, to arms, all of us, Europe, and we will succeed, and that is the only way for us. Putin's regime should be destroyed.
Merci.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me now give the floor to Mr. Fassino. You had the floor, sir.
Oui, merci.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to take the floor on the issue of the elections held in North Macedonia, because I think that we need to be very careful with regard to the results and the political consequences of this. As I'm sure you're aware, the elections in North Macedonia were ones in which the party of the opposition won. It's a Conservative party. It's a party that, in fact, challenged the agreement, and the agreement based on the name for the of North Macedonia, which was essential to open up the North Macedonians' path towards European Union membership. And it didn't want to accept that it was a reference. There's a reference for the Bulgarian minority in the North Macedonian constitution. So there are two essential points here I think we need to make with regard to normalization of relations with North Macedonia and the European Union, and North Macedonia and Bulgaria. I think we need to be very careful about this, because the Western Balkans situation is a very fragile one. There is an objective being pursued by Mr. Dodik, the president of the Serbska Republic, and that is to separate Bosnia from Bosnia-Herzegovina. And there's a very fragile situation in Montenegro as a result of the crisis that has been sparked within the ruling party, and this relates to the Prime Minister and the President. And the whole issue of relations between Serbia and Kosovo hasn't yet been resolved. And as things stand today, we have a government in North Macedonia which is pursuing a strategy and a line. If you look at what the discourse of the current Prime Minister is, and this strategy and line is calling into question the Prespa agreements, which were of huge importance to create stability in North Macedonia and the region as a whole. I think, therefore, we should express our concern about this, and we need to send a very clear message here, and a message to authorities in North Macedonia. Now, of course, elections and the result of elections need to be respected. Whoever has won the elections needs to be legitimately recognized as the party in government, but I think we need to send a very clear message. We're calling on the North Macedonian government to respect the international commitments it signed up to, that were signed up to by the previous government. We want the Presca agreement to be fulfilled. We don't want to call into question the agreement on the name of North Macedonia, which has already been settled. And we're not going to interrupt dialogue with Bulgaria because we want to resolve the issue of the Bulgarian minorities living in North Macedonia. I think this is of paramount importance if we want to continue to play our part in ensuring that we don't further destabilise this region in the Western Balkans, which is a very fragile situation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me now give the floor to Mrs. Kravchuk of Ukraine. You have the floor.
Dear colleagues, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Madam Secretary General BURIČ for her work. And we have a lot of things to remember, of course, and as it was already mentioned, the expulsion of Russian Federation in 2022 actually gave sort of a second breath to Council of Europe. We had this Leaders Summit, we had the Register of Damage created, we might have a special tribunal created, and it will be quite historical. And right now we are at a historical moment, of course, of making a decision tomorrow as an assembly for another Secretary General. And it's very important, the overall criteria to the candidates to go forward, to establish the compensation mechanism after the Register of Damage is established, to make sure that we do create a special tribunal. That's what leadership means. And I would like to underline that we are a special assembly, because no other assemblies select Secretary Generals in international organizations. So we do have power as parliamentarians. So let's use it wisely. And of course, I would like to stop a bit on the North Macedonia elections. Well, first of all, for the first time in the history of this country, there is a women president elected, Madame Gordana Sianovska-Davkova, and of course, I want to congratulate her as the first female president of North Macedonia, and of course to thank her to come for the Peace Summit in Switzerland, to be in Berlin for the Recovery Conference, and also signing the communique after the Peace Summit. But of course, I want to underline that the participation of women in parliamentary election could be better, because though there is 42% formula, women are being put in the lower part of the list. So I would recommend to follow what we have in Ukraine, because in Ukrainian legislation, in every 5 candidates, you have to have 2 and 3 of different genders, and it brings more women to the parliament. Also, we can share with North Macedonia new legislation that we passed. I'm co-author of it on media, and in the report it's rightfully mentioned that this country should go on with renewable of media legislation. So we can share this our experience, because we're both on the path to EU, European Union, and I wish luck to North Macedonia to be a member of EU, and of course Ukraine. Thank you.
Merci. Monsieur.
Thank you very much. Mr. John Mikra from Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you. The report concerning the observation of the presidential and parliamentary elections in the North Macedonia on the 24th of April and the 8th of May is a well-written, detailed and informative report. Thank you to Mr. Alfred Heer, the rapporteur and the chairperson of the ad hoc committee, the 2 co-rapporteurs, the legal advisors, the representatives from the Venice Commission, and all the staff that made it possible to arrange this observation. And thank you to the North Macedonian authorities and all the people all over North Macedonia who made this election possible to arrange. PEJČ observed these elections while North Macedonia is engaged in a post-monitoring dialogue with the Assembly. The report describes many challenges concerning rule of law, human rights, independence of the judiciary, the fight against corruption, securing the rights of minorities, and other important topics. There is still important work to be done, and I expect the full cooperation from the recently elected authorities in North Macedonia in these issues. One of the 2 voting days, and on the 2 voting days, the administration of the voting process was assessed positively by observers in 99% of the polling stations observed. Representatives from political parties or candidates were present in 86% of the polling stations, contributing to transparency. Of course, it was situations and some violations of regulations, but in total, the election process was positively evaluated. North Macedonia is an important stabilizer in the Balkans, and it's crucial that we continue to work together, Council of Europe and the people and authorities of North Macedonia.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Madame Güren Bölük from Turkey, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, chers collègues.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam President. North Macedonia is a crucial country in the Balkans of the continent, and it's an important country as far as Turkey is concerned. The 2 countries have historic and cultural ties, and with North Macedonia, we have bilateral and important bilateral cultural and political ties. We've established political ties, as I say, and citizens from northern Turkey and in North Macedonia. The fact that there are close cultural ties brings the 2 countries together. We support the contribution being made by North Macedonia to prosperity and stability on the continent. Our friends in North Macedonia have always given their support and proven their friendship during the earthquake that we suffered last year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thanking them once again. The citizens in North Macedonia recently attended the 2nd round of presidential elections, parliamentary elections, the 11th general elections, and the 7th presidential election since the Declaration of Independence in 1991. 1,750 candidates, some 750 women amongst them from differing political parties were in the running for the 126 seats in the parliament. We welcome all the candidates for having conducted a competitive and fair electoral process. As far as Turkey is concerned, we express our satisfaction. There are 5 parliamentarians of Turkish origin who've taken up their post within the parliament. North Macedonia is an important country in the Balkans because it has ensured social cohesion in a multi-ethnic society. Colleagues, I would like to congratulate North Macedonia that July 23 and into 2024 has been heading the Southeast Europe cooperation project that seeks to promote economic cooperation, forge closer ties, and to bolster democratic institutions, the fight against illegal activities, and upholding human rights. North Macedonia is not a member of the EU or NATO. All more important, therefore, for us to support the Southeast Europe political cooperation project. We, as a Balkan country, we share the same history, the same culture, and I think, therefore, that we can, through dialogue, ensure better integration within the European continent. And I think it's the interest of the continent as a whole to support these initiatives with a view to ensure successful enlargement of the Union and for great prosperity for us all. And to conclude, I'd like to congratulate North Macedonia on these democratic elections, and I wish North Macedonia well, and I wish well the incoming government. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Gevorgian from Armenia, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Europe is facing crucial challenges. They will define not only the place of Europe in global order, but also its future as a unique civilization. I will elaborate about 3 such issues. First, All institutions of European integration and cooperation should redefine their mechanism of operation and functionality. The Council of Europe has a special mission in this regard, and the new Secretary General shall deal with this challenge without delay. We have to avoid the evolution of the Council of Europe into a simple bureaucratic entity that serves the interests of the right governments. Such an approach has already resulted in a situation while democratic institutions of Armenia, despite the reforms funded by European taxpayers, are functioning in a non-democratic way. Unquestionable commitment to human rights, democracy, and the rule of law are and must remain the only criteria for our organization. The second important challenge is the obvious abuse of the idea of European perspective or path for domestic propaganda reasons. Let's face it, over the time the European aspirations have been allowed to become tools for domestic political speculations and competition that has been damaging to this very idea. The European dream has in fact ceased being an encouragement for the elites to make reforms and positive changes. When the European idea is being abused only for reason of staying in power, when it's inadequate to existing geopolitical and historical realities, it only becomes a source of new division lines inside the society. It's a fact that such negative process being started in Armenia too. And the last, we observe trends of Islamization as a tool of influence on domestic political processes in Europe, and we see Turkic world as the generator and main beneficiary of this. 2 years ago, I distributed a research report in this assembly which showed how Turkey and its minor ally Azerbaijan have used funds and influence to weaponize religion in Europe and against European democratic security. In these past 2 years, we see only new signs that this trend is well and alive. The most recent mutiny in French New Caledonia, according to French officials encouraged by Azerbaijan, is just the latest example. Armenia is already experiencing the wallpower of aggressive and neo-Ottoman aspirations of Turkey and Azerbaijan. To avoid these new troubles and deeper division lines inside European societies, the Europe must stand against this trend. Thank you.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Vogels from the Netherlands. You have the floor.
Merci, Madam Chair. Distinguished colleagues, I had the opportunity to take part in a mission to observe the parliamentary and presidential elections in North Macedonia in May 2024 on behalf of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. And we formed a joint international elections observation team, together with my fellow members of this Assembly, members of the European Parliament, and the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, ODIHR. In 2 working days, all elections observers were well prepared, including a crash course on the organization of the country North Macedonia and its electoral system, and many introductory sessions with NGOs and political party leaders. We also met the independent presidential candidate, Ms. Gordana Siljanovska-Davkova, who was elected with a large majority, becoming the country's first female president. And this was a notable exception, as the campaigns featured few women political figures overall. Although the law requires a minimum of 40% representation of each gender on each candidate list, and all lists met these requirements, the women were often placed in the lowest positions on the list, hence not elected. On the day of the elections, on the 8th of May, my observation team visited 13 polling stations in Skopje and surroundings. We found no irregularities. It was a calm and peaceful election day. The Joint International Observation Mission concluded that the elections were competitive and fundamental freedoms were respected. But while the election legislation provides a suitable framework for holding democratic elections, many gaps and inconsistencies compromised legal certainty, making further reform essential. I wish North Macedonia all ambition and strength to implement necessary reforms on its way to a future as a full member of the European Union. It was an honor and privilege to serve as an election observer in North Macedonia and to share my experience with you today. Thank you.
Merci, Madame. La liste des orateurs est épuisée.
Thank you very much. That completes the list of speakers. Our rapporteur, Mrs. Elisabetta Gardini, you now have 3 minutes to reply to the speakers. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to thank all colleagues. I listened very carefully to what everyone had to say. And I can tell you we're so grateful at all the appreciation you have shown for the work that has been done by Ian Little-Granger. There appears to be a broad consensus in that regard. And also thanks to Mr. Nemeth, because he drew the Assembly's attention to the fact that Gotrenko has been sentenced to 10 years imprisonment by a Russian court in absentia. Now, this really is unprecedented, and of course the President of the Assembly has said in a tweet that this is a further act that we should deplore, but I think that also shows the good work that's been done by this institution. Now, of course, we will continue to work. Mr. Boulay reminded us of this, that we will also have to continue looking into the case of Mr. Karamudza, and this very morning the Bureau gave the go-ahead for the rapporteurship of a new rapporteur on the situation in Russia, and certainly Russia and the fate of Mr. Karamudza will be at the center of all our efforts. I would like to conclude by reminding you of what Mr. Schenach said when he talked about the peace summit which was held in Switzerland. Our Secretary General, Ms. BURIĆ, took part in that event, and she made a very good speech, and I would like to recognize the sensitive awareness that she showed for the plight of Ukrainian children in Russia. Here in the chamber, I would like to thank Ms. BURIČ for all the work that she has done. She has been in office, I dare say, in the most difficult years for this institution, coinciding with a pandemic as well as the outbreak of war in Europe, something that my generation thought we would never see again. So I'd like to thank all colleagues for all of their input, all their contribution to our debate this morning and this afternoon. Everything they have said shows that regardless of what divides us, we can tread a common path, and we, of course, will stand up for the role of this organization in upholding democracy and human rights. And I should like to pay tribute to Ms. BURIČ, because I do think that she has given perhaps a little greater feminine sensibility to this organization during her tenure. So thanks to all colleagues, and wish you a successful week ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. The Bureau has decided that it will make the references to committee which are contained in document 16007 Addendum 1 and 2. If there are no objections, then those references are duly ratified. We now move on to looking at the other Bureau decisions which are contained in the progress report, which is in document 16007 Addendum 1 and Addendum 2. Are there any objections to the adoption of those decisions? Apparently not. The progress report is therefore agreed. The next item of business is the presentation of the report on the modification of various provisions of the Assembly's Rules of Procedure, for which our rapporteur is Engert Skau on behalf of the Committee on Rules of Procedure, Immunities and Institutional Affairs, contained in document 15996. I would remind you that we need to conclude the debate including consideration of the amendments by 5:30 this afternoon. And we will therefore have to interrupt the list of speakers at around 5:20 in order to allow time for the replies of the committee and in order to carry out the vote.
On va attendre un petit peu et tout.
We'll wait just a moment. We will resume presently.
Madame la rapporteure, vous dites...
Madam Rapporteur, you have a total of 7 minutes speaking time for the presentation of your report and 3 minutes for your reply to the speakers in the debate at the end of the general debate. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam President, it's right to be. And colleagues, it is important to regularly reflect upon how to improve, to clarify, simplify or modify our rules to ensure the best possible functioning of our Assembly. The draft resolution before us is the result of thorough discussions in the committee. I am grateful to my colleagues for the fruitful discussions which has enabled us to agree on all the points included in the draft resolution. The draft resolution contains proposals regarding the procedure for examining amendments in the plenary, speaking times for rapporteurs, quorum requirements in committees, notifications of substitutes by debate, the possibility of tabling written questions to the Committee of Ministers by groups of members, the duration of the terms of reference of periodic review reports by the Monitoring Committee, additional rights for partners for democracy under specific conditions and upon decisions by the Bureau, minor adjustment to the terms of reference of certain committees, and various changes necessitated by parliamentary practice, lowering the threshold for the formation of a political group, removing explanatory reports for debates under the urgent procedure, access to meetings of the Monitoring Committee for secretariats of political groups. I will go into detail on some of these issues. The Rules Committee was invited to look at the functioning of the Assembly during the pandemic. The procedures and practices from operating in remote and hybrid mode led to modernization of the Assembly in many ways. The committee therefore proposed to permanently introduce mechanisms that add value to our procedures, many which were highlighted by committee chairs in their feedback regarding their work during the pandemic. Regarding the discussions of amendments in the plenary, we propose that if a committee has not been able to take a position on amendments, the floor shall be given to the rapporteur. Regarding speaking time allocated to rapporteurs, we propose to limit speaking time to 10 minutes, as has been the practice since the pandemic. Regarding notification of substitutes, we propose that substitutions are made by debate. President and colleagues, following the expulsion of Russia from the Council of Europe, the number of members of our Assembly has decreased. The Rules Committee proposed that the threshold for the formation of political groups is lowered to 26 members, the same percentage as the threshold was before Russia was expelled. Unlike national parliaments, the composition of our Assembly changes as elections are held in member states. It is essential to have a political representative, credible and effective. Politically representative, credible and effective. Parliamentary Assembly acting, debating and deciding on the basis of ideas and positions expressed by representatives of the major European political family. The committee therefore suggests cumulative criteria so that a political group is not immediately dissolved when dropping below the 26-member threshold. Being politically irrelevant and reactive is important. The number of debates and urgent procedure has increased significantly. These debates considerably contribute to political relevance and visibility. In order to sustain this practice, the committee proposes to simplify reports for debates under urgent procedure with only draft resolutions, no explanatory memorandums. This will enable us to be even more, more relevant and able to take important political positions on burning issues. And dear colleagues, last year, in 2023, our Assembly adopted a resolution on the functioning of the Partnership for Democracy. Through this resolution, we decided that the Partners for Democracy may be granted additional rights. This decision means that our rules must be updated. The possible additional rights may be granted by decision of the Bureau, ratified by the Assembly at the beginning of a new session. The decision shall be based on a proposal by the political committee and granted for the duration of a session, 1 year, with the possibility to extend or not to extend depending on the results. Let me stress, Madam President, that these rights are not granted automatically, and that the proposal in the report are a result of the Assembly decision taken last year. Colleagues and Madam President, the Rules Committee has discussed the terms of reference of reports. Possible prolongations was deliberated, but we decided to stick to the current 2 years mandate. However, experience has shown that it is almost impossible for the monitoring committee to comply with this for the periodic review reports. We therefore propose to extend the duration of the mandate of these references to 3 years. Also relating to the monitoring committee, the appointment of co-rapporteurs has been discussed. In particular, the possible incompatibility of simultaneously being monitored rapporteur and member or president of a parliamentary friendship group with the country in question. And only 2 sentences more, we concluded that even though it is an asset to have a certain knowledge of the country concerned, being affiliated with its friendship group may objectively be perceived as a conflict of interest. I rather continue my speech later and follow the time rules, so thank you.
Merci, Madame la rapporteure.
Thank you very much indeed to our rapporteur. In the general debate, I first of all call Mr. Graf on behalf of the ECDA.
On n'entend pas. Vous devez mettre votre...
We can't hear you right now. You need to put your card in and then press the button. Wait a couple of seconds.
Appuyez une seule fois, s'il vous plaît.
Ist das Mikrofon? Ja.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam President. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. First of all, I would like to thank the rapporteur for having dealt with this matter so thoroughly, looking at the future development of our Assembly's rules of procedure, because we're all aware of the fact that at the end of the day, the rules of procedure is a kind of a lowest common denominator. It's a sort of a minimal consensus. And of course, it could respond to some criticisms. We, for example, for our part, have criticized the fact that the number of members of a group has been reduced. I can remember back in 2019, there was an application to form a new political group, and the threshold was then raised from 20 up to 28, and then shortly thereafter, just a few years later, we now have the impression, at a time at which another group runs the risk of not meeting that threshold, the idea is now being floated that we reduce that number. So it seems to be a little bit arbitrary. That seems to be what is happening. But I think there are certain basic principles that we should abide by, and that will make it difficult in future for those who are unable to muster the numbers to form a political group. But there's another point I think we should pay even closer attention to. We see that many colleagues here in the Parliamentary Assembly have enormous difficulties in their own countries to get to the committee meetings, even if they're serving as rapporteur, and they get the authorization far too late to be able to attend those meetings. And I think that this body should see to it that all members of this Assembly must be allowed to attend the meetings and to arrive in good time to take part in the exchanges of views. I mean, let me just pick one example, Armenia, for example, where we've had repeated problems in coming to a view because there are all kinds of administrative obstacles. And I also think that it is self-evident that the President, as well as the Secretary-General, need to intervene and make sure that that is the case to a greater extent than has been the case in the past. I think that we need a transparency register for NGOs as well, because to my mind, NGOs are basically lobbyists, and we have lobbyists, and then we have the NGOs who are there, of course, to perhaps line up with certain political factions, and so I think that we need to include something to that end in the rules of procedure as well.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, hearing someone talking about making a list of NGOs to be included in a transparent list sounds like a type of legislation adopted newly in a country that is identical to the one adopted in Russia in 2004. So I'm a bit skeptical about that type of procedures, but beyond that, Kjære Inger, tusen takk for det du har gjort for oss. Thank you so much for your report, dear Inger. It's been a great report, and I really have appreciated the fact that you've been doing it very wisely in dialogue with us and with exchange of views that have made it have a great outcome. That being said, our group and me personally, we are not the greatest fans of lowering the threshold for the lowest numbers of the group. But that being said, I'm very happy that together we have made it so that there are two criteria that would ensure the existence of a group beyond the due date of the registration of the numbers, in order not to allow abuses with the resources that are to be given in that group. The transparency of resources and also the legitimacy of the group. It is very important. We should be vigilant in not allowing dormant groups in our assembly. And of course, if we go too much low, that is a risk. But I think its outcome is very balanced. I think it has a high representation of the willingness to accommodate these requests by most of the members of the Assembly. We are happy with that. I congratulate you one more time, and I hope that this would be voted by a large majority of this Assembly. Thank you once again.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I now call Mr. Hunko on behalf of the UEL Group.
Präsidentin, vielen Dank.
Madam President, thank you very much indeed. Let me begin by thanking our rapporteur, Ingrid. Thank you very much indeed for a very committed handling of the report and an open ear when it comes to any suggestions. Now, when it comes to the threshold for groups, there's been a major debate on that issue. It's been touched upon 20, and then it was increased to 28, and so on. In fact, it's not a clear rule compared with other international bodies. It's 3.2% of the European Parliament. If you look at the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, 3.2, we're slightly above that in terms of our threshold, but 28 to 26 because we're smaller in number because of the Russian exclusion. We understand that and support it. And we very much welcome the fact that given the fluctuating nature of this organization, because every election, of course, changes the composition of this body, I think it's right that members don't leave straight away if straight away after one election one is just beneath the threshold. And we welcome the fact that we're sort of fleshing out the rights in terms of partnership for democracy, and I hope that this goes down well. Kyrgyzstan, Palestine, Morocco, I hope our partners will benefit from these new rules. Now, the problem with the friendship groups, we welcome the change being suggested by the Rules Committee. So that some would be excluded from being a rapporteur in the Monitoring Committee if they happen to be the chair of a friendship group. Now, there are parliaments where automatically you're almost inevitably in a friendship group, given sort of global ties, so you would be excluded then automatically. So we welcome the bulk of these rules. When it comes to meetings in person, that be the rule. We're very much in favour of that. There are a number of things where we wouldn't be totally in agreement. That's to say the change in respect of current affairs debates, that the persons initiating the motion, that their position be taken into account, and then the deadlines when it comes to substitutes, the 24-hour deadline in terms of notification of substitutes. We don't think that that's a very good rule. But when it comes to the rules of procedure, I think this Assembly time and again has called for some kind of parity. That's something that we've attempted to do as a left-wing group. We've had to overcome a certain number of hurdles, but we hope that our example will serve us well in the future, so that we have a sort of a gender-balanced presidential committee in the future.
Thank you. Now call Ms. Bayer on behalf of the Socialist Group.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President.
rules of procedure are made to coordinate our work, to avoid disputes, and if there are disputes, to help us to settle them. And the changes we debate today have been discussed for a quite long time. I want to thank Ingrid for her long breath and for her patience with us, because it was not easy. But to be honest, it might not be totally over, the changes of the rules of procedure. Because besides robust rules, and we also need the engagement of MPs. It is key. They, of course, have to be able to participate, and for the functioning of the Assembly, rules and active MPs are important. And we have the feeling that there are still some adjustments in our way to work that might help to make a better performance, to include more and engage more MPs actively, be it in the plenary, be it in communities as rapporteurs or on election observation missions. And to get an idea of what you all would like to, how you would like to work in this Assembly, we have sent you a questionnaire via email for those of you who would like to search it. It was last Thursday at 5:39 p.m. Central European Time. It might help to find it in your emails. And this survey covers some questions, very general ones about yourself, about your age, sex, whether are you in opposition or in a governing party, whether you are from a small or a big delegation, and so on. But we also ask about issues like what happened before you joined the Assembly. Was it hard to get here? Did you have to fight? Were you forced to do so, even if you didn't want to come? So we would like to know that. We would like to know about how you feel during sessions. What about your participation, the preferences for the durations, for instance, of the plenary meetings? What incentives and challenges do you see in your work? We also ask about tools like the app, like the media box. Do you know it? Do you use it? What else would you find helpful? What would you like to have? And what is your attendance in the committees? What are your favorite committees? Which one do you like not so much? All these things are important for us. Also, what do you do after sessions? Is there any chance that what you are doing here, that the work you are doing here, to bring that home in your parliament? Is it debated there? Can you bring it to constituencies, or is nobody interested in it? If so, what can we do to improve the interest on your work here? So we are very much interested to know your ideas, your feedback, and this all will feed into a report that should help us to increase the quality of our cooperation, and maybe we will need some more adaptations of the rules if necessary. So please, please, please fill in this questionnaire. We need the wisdom of the crowd. We need the wisdom of you. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much. We now continue with our speakers list. Ms. Katia from Malta, you have the floor.
Non, elle n'est pas là.
Not here, apparently. Next speaker, Mr. Hollick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As St. Augustine, the famous theologist, widely said, Ecclesia semper reformanda est, in English means that the church must always be reformed. It's an important message from the past, means for us now, in a changing world, we also have to adapt and renew ourselves, our common work here in Parliamentary Assembly. So the next item on the agenda discusses some regulatory provisions of the Parliamentary Assembly in order to clarify the changes that have occurred in parliamentary practice. The main amendments submitted affects the following areas: the procedure and the work methods used in hybrid or remote mode and their feasibility, the procedure for clarifying applicable General Assembly guidelines related to written question addressed to the Committee of Ministers, and the duration of assignment of periodic review reports prepared by the monitoring committee. So the procedures and practices used by the Parliamentary Assembly during the pandemic led to the modernization and improvement of the Assembly's operation in many respects. Therefore, it seems desirable to permanently introduce those mechanisms that represent added value to the Assembly's procedure. And therefore, I would like to thank you, the excellent work for the rapporteur. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Ms. Amraki from Morocco, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, allow me as a member of the Moroccan parliamentary delegation to express my satisfaction over the very close and multifaceted relations that Morocco has had for a number of years with the Council of Europe when it comes to forging closer ties in the context of a community of shared values and the gradual harmonization of our legislation in the European legal space. That is, after all, the aim of our partnership. The Kingdom of Morocco, may I remind you, was the first country to request and obtain Partner for Democracy status with the Parliamentary Assembly in 2011. And since then, that partnership has been strengthened through the regular participation of our parliamentary delegation in sessions of the Parliamentary Assembly and also in work of the committees promoting exchanges with our parliamentary colleagues from member states of the Council of Europe. Morocco has also been the subject of 3 evaluations or assessments in 2013, 15 and 19. The Assembly presented a very positive picture of the results obtained through the partnership. And the last resolution adopted clearly showed a firm commitment to further develop cooperation with neighbouring regions in Europe as a means of consolidating democratic transformation and promoting stability, good governance, respect of human rights and the rule of law. And above and beyond that, promoting an exchange on the possible evolution of the Partner for Democracy status itself. But of course, a partnership isn't a one-way street, and I think what Morocco has learned through it could be very relevant. Morocco should be seen as a bridge between Europe and Africa and could contribute to strengthening South-South cooperation. Since 2011, of course, we have matured during the partnership, and of course, that maturation, that maturing is particular to individual countries that have partnership status. But Morocco stands apart in terms of its own neighbourhood in wanting to obtain such a partnership. We've also always wanted to explore new avenues for cooperation with the Assembly, a partnership based on common interests and complementarity. It's normal, therefore, that we would want to see ourselves as standing apart. Lines of demarcation are part of any partnership logic, and that is certainly the case with the Council of Europe. Strengthening the partnership, consolidating our membership of a common legal area is the aim that we set ourselves. And of course, the container is more. The content is more important than the container. The container is only a means to achieve our aim without narrowing our horizons. It's important, therefore, the partnership evolves and is supple, shows creativity, breaking with rigid preconceived contexts or frameworks. I'd like to conclude by congratulating Ingrid for the report. Our thanks also to our colleagues who support the partnership, and I'd invite the Bureau and the Assembly to grant the Moroccan delegation, as of the January part session, the additional rights that will be introduced into the rules as of this report.
Thank you very much. That concludes the list of speakers, and I now call for a reply from the committee. The rapporteur, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, good colleagues, also for your comments. I just want to finish what I just needed to say in my first speech, is that the rules of procedure is not very reader-friendly. The committee proposed that thorough editorial work is undertaken to simplify our rules while ensuring coherence. And I would like to give some comments to our colleagues. And first, I'd like to say that this is the oldest organization dealing with democracy, principle of states, and taking care of human rights. It's the oldest organization in the international architecture, and it needs some structure, and it needs also clear rules. This report, we have worked with it for more than 2 years, and a report lives as long until the next one, and I think there will be a next one in the future also, because it's also changing and new moments are coming. And I would like to give some thank you, Martin Graf, for your comments. I do have to say that to form a political group, you can do that, but to be a political group here, as far as I remember, because I was rapporteur for that report also, you have to be present in 7-8 countries and reach more than 4% and so on. And when we had a threshold for 26 now, well, it's almost the same in percents before the Russian, after Russian leave now, the same figures in percentage as today. And I also like to say that I have thought that this report will live longer than I'm here, because it has been some difficulties. We have to be honest about that, but also good reflections and good conversations, and also listen to the 5 groups and others coming here. I think that this is the result of what we have managed to agree to, and I think I would also like especially to thank the committee secretariat, because they have been very patient for their tireless efforts. As times change and parliamentary practice evolve, this won't be the last report on modifying our rules of procedure, and I can say to my colleague Petra Bayer, she's not here now, but I have fulfilled the questionnaire, and I do hope that also my other colleagues will do that. And before now, we will. This will be the most updated report, I think, and also the rule that we can live with until the next report. So, thank you.
Merci, Madame la rapporteure.
Thank you very much indeed. The chair of the committee.
Excusez-nous.
I do apologise. The chair of the committee, Ms. Engelhardt, would you like to reply? So you have 3 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Dear colleagues, let me start my few remarks by thanking our rapporteur, Ms. Ingrid Skau, for her hard work on this report. And as I suggested, it was 2.5 years. Thank you so much. She has presented a comprehensive compendium of suggestions to update or strengthen our rules. Each proposal has been thoroughly discussed by the Rules Committee. We had a lot of important discussions. We took the necessary time to discuss in the depth of the proposals, and we have produced a good report. Believe me, while the Rules Committee has less members than other committees, its discussions are not less lively. I take this opportunity to also thank the committee members for their involvement and for their dedication. Much of our parliamentary procedure has developed and evolved in the light of our parliamentary practice. The Rules Committee shall continue to keep our rules under scrutiny and stays at the disposal of the Bureau of the Assembly to look into further possible adaptations of the rules. But for now, I invite you to support the draft resolution presented by the Rules Committee. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. The general debate is now closed. The Rules Committee has presented a draft resolution. This is document 15996, to which 1 amendment has been tabled. Colleagues, let me remind you that speaking time for moving an amendment is limited to 30 seconds. I now call Mr. Marija to move amendment number 1?
Est-ce que quelqu'un d'autre...
Not here. Does anybody else wish to move that amendment? Mr. Koliatan, you have the floor.
Madam President, colleagues, in a very spontaneous manner, I was among the co-signatories of this amendment. The idea is very simple. Most of the colleagues, members of different national parliaments, are in the same time members of different parliamentary friendship groups with many other countries. In this capacity, there is a need to try to offer them also the possibility to do things here in the Council of Europe, not to be put it in the situation of incompatibilities because they are members of friendship groups with other national parliaments. So the proposal is to maintain this incompatibility for the chairs of the friendship groups from different national parliaments, but not to put obstacles to the simple members, and this is the essence of this amendment. I think it's a common sense, and I will ask colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, there it is, yeah. I will speak against, because, and I have to remember all of us the history of this assembly and the problems, history of problems with conflicts of interest, specifically in the monitoring procedure. And why am I against? I disagree with the amendment, and I think it's also one misunderstanding, because the proposals does not disqualify any parliamentarian who is member of a friendship group from being monitoring rapporteur. The purpose of the proposal is to avoid potential conflicts of interest. If you are a member or chair a friendship group of a certain country, you should not be able to be a rapporteur for the specific country. And if, as in France, you have 150 friendship groups, you can still be a member of 149. And if this is a problem, well, you have to take a rewash in your parliament. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. What is the view of the committee?
With a two-thirds majority in favor of the amendment.
On n'entend pas bien.
Sorry, we didn't hear that.
Si vous voulez répéter.
Could you repeat what you just said, please?
Yes.
Yes, the committee was with a two-thirds majority in favor to the amendment.
Merci. Nous allons.
Thank you. We'll now put the amendment to the vote. The vote is open.
Vous voyez les gens qui votent au fur et à mesure, donc tant que ça bouge. Ouais. Il faut savoir combien de secondes. Oui, non. Encore, quand vous voyez que ça bouge encore.
Le scrutin est.
The vote is closed. I ask for the result to be displayed. Amendment number 1 is adopted. We now move on to vote on the draft resolution contained in document 15996 as amended. The vote is open. The vote is closed. Please, could we have the result? The draft resolution contained in document 15996 is adopted. Congratulations. Congratulations to the rapporteur. The next sitting will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. in keeping with the order of business of the part session. The sitting stands adjourned.